alright احنا كده live. Let's get started. أولا صباح الخير. ثانيا today's topic is something I'm very passionate about. It's about planning and organization, and specifically about how to design an organizational system that works for you and sort of is the foundation for how you accomplish goals and tasks. والpresentation النهاردة is built very heavily على the work of two people. That's Dave Crankshaw and Thomas Frank. Dave Crankshaw is a productivity influencer, I can say, and Thomas Frank is a YouTuber who's also pretty focused on the whole idea of trying to optimize your time and your productivity. If you have any questions, please just unmute yourself or ask them على طول. If I ask any question that I need your interaction with هروح meet and I see your answers. بس غير كده مش هبقى شايفة الحاجات اللي بتبقى typed out. طيب خلينا نبدأ, and I want to start this out by discussing multitasking. Multitasking is a myth, but let's get that out of the way. When we think of multitasking, it's actually switching. We're constantly going in a round robin between everything that we're currently doing. We're not doing anything at the same time. I'm doing one task and then switching to another and then switching to another. And some people are good at switching. Some people are really good at switching. But no matter how good you are, nothing compares to sticking to one simple task. Let's discuss a very small example. So you can try this even at your own time. You can start a timer, write your name. So for me, that's Harb. And then write a number corresponding to your name. So that will be, for me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then stop your time and record it. Now do this exercise one more time, but instead of doing it the way which you write your full name and then your whole numbers, you have to write the first letter and then the first number. So in my case, that would be A, 1, Y, 2, and so on. Compare your 2 times. On average, people take twice as much the second time around. And this is something as ingrained in us as writing our own names. We've been doing this for our whole lives, and counting. So if multitasking is a myth and switching is slow, what's the solution? Because we're not robots. We can't block all incoming distractions and thoughts to concentrate on just one thing at a time. We need to be able to do أكتر من حاجة في الوقت. This is the introduction of an idea called background tasking. Background tasking is a term that was coined by Dave Crenshaw. It differs من switching by the complexity of the 2 tasks. It is a type of switching, but the main basis is that you interrupt one very tasking task. So you take a task that requires a lot of energy, a lot of brain power, and you interrupt it by another task that is very mundane and that's very short before going back to it. The whole idea of background tasking can be explained simply by think you're writing your name, but instead of stopping at every letter to write a number, you're going to stop once and draw a line. It's still technically switching. It's still taking more time than if you were just to write out your name fully and then draw the line. However, it's still better than stopping every minute or stopping every letter to do something else. Background tasking is the main idea behind the organization system that I'll be outlining today. Okay, so as the slides load, part of our daily lives, whether inside Robusta or outside Robusta, there are tasks that always need doing. احنا دايما عندنا حاجة that we need to be doing now وحاجة محتاجين نبقى خلصناها واحنا لسه ما ابتديناهاش. And there's always constant interruptions, حاجات جاية لنا that maybe don't need doing right now, but they will need to be done in the future. Maybe they need to actually be done now and be handled now as we're doing something else. And we're either left trying to do everything at once. So I'll try to do both things at the time. We've seen this where you try to attend the meeting and reply to an email because they both came and they both need to be dealt with at this time. Or you're going to write whatever that interruption is. Either you store it in your brain or write it down on the first piece of paper that you have or in the first the first gathering point that you have in front of you to be checked later. But this creates a problem of it's not structured. So this needs to be changed. We can't keep on handling things as they come wherever we want to put them. For us to change, we need to truly understand what our current system is. We need to see what criteria we're trying to achieve. We need to basically dig deep into our lives and try to figure out and understand where we are now. I'll divide the digging deep into 3 main parts. And from every part, we're going to have a step that we can do to find our organization framework. The first step is space. This is basically where are you recording your data? Where, when you have something that's incoming that needs you to handle it, where do you put that? Where do you store it? Where are your ideas, thoughts, and data located, whether physically or digitally? For space, for mind, it's your mind cannot be the thing that stores the data. Our mind cannot perform at maximum capacity if they're always cluttered. So what do you do when you get a thought? Because we're always having intrusive thoughts throughout the day. So how do you handle that? And finally, it's our time. Basically, how do we budget our time? Because we're constantly budgeting it without actual conscious thought. Throughout this close inspection, we'll compare our current system with the more ideal version, and we will identify exact steps to take us from where we are now to, I shy away from the word perfect, but as perfect as possible for you planning system. Let's start out with space. Where do you keep your ideas, your thoughts, your notes? Every person has something called the gathering point in their life. A gathering point basically is the place where you throw things that you don't want to handle right now or that you're storing for some later processing time. And they don't have to be just work related. So I've included here some of the work related things like our emails, our note apps, our digital lists, your actual planner if you use one, a notice board, sticky notes, notebooks. But look around you, you would probably find a drawer that contains all the old receipts you need to figure out and solve, or an order that you needed to return that's on top of a shelf or in a box. We as humans collect a lot of gathering points in our lives. On average, a human being has 30 gathering points. That's 30 places where something that I don't know where it could be can be. 30 is a ridiculous number. If I took some notes in a meeting and 3 months later I need to reference these notes, but if I don't remember if I wrote them physically or digitally, I have 30 places to look. Let's have a very short exercise. Look around you, throw in the chat the first organization point, gathering point you find around you. It can be a drawer, it can be your email if you have it open, it can be WhatsApp where you are storing all your messages that need handling. Look around you, you'll find immediately gathering points that pop at you. And how many of these points mobile reminders is a big thing. I prefer notebooks personally, so I always have those. I personally also feel the voice notes to myself. I do that all the time. And how many of those things do you know 100% and there's nothing inside them that you don't need to be handling right now? So let's say in your notebook, there are no notes that you took in a meeting about something else that you needed to have sent in an email that you forgot about. Or maybe in that drawer, there are batteries that you should have recycled and it's probably really harmful and they've been sitting in the drawers for this long. Let's try something else. Emails. How many email accounts do you have? How many active email accounts do you have? For me, for my case, I have my work email, my university email, and I have 2 personal emails. One is one I use to sign up for things, and the other is a more professional. I need to contact someone with it. I don't know, or I never remember which of these I use for my edX account. My EDX account is logged in. so I don't need to log in every time. However, whenever I need a reminder, I have to go through at least 2 of my emails to remember which one did I actually use to sign up. It's not something that I do often enough where I actually remember which one I use from time to time. But it's not something that I have in one place. This is the one place I have to check my emails. So we're talking about 30. Some people have up to 120 gathering spaces around them. The lowest recorded is 3, but this is the record for someone's gathering space, and this is someone who's done a lot of work to try to minimize the spaces around them. طيب 30 is too many. ايه الماجيك number? The recommended number is 5. Don't get me wrong, 5 is not a hard rule. It can be more, it can be less, but on average 5 is as much as you probably would need. The 5 are an email, a notepad, something physical, something portable, and a wildcard. Let's start off with the email. I've seen in the chat averages of 2s and 4s for the email accounts. The email should be a single account. If you have different accounts, then you can very easily set them up to all forward to one place so that I can see all of my emails, all of my incoming data in one single place. And I can reply to whatever I need to reply also through one single inbox. The notepad here can be digital or physical, as long as it's something that is accessible all the time and it's intuitive. So I can't have to go through 6 or 7 steps to get to where I need to be to record my note. And physical doesn't really apply to like work at Robusta. We do mainly digital, but it applies to a lot of personal things, so I thought it's very important to keep it. A physical gathering point for all the things that we receive that can't process now. Documents, receipts, a sticky note someone left us, a letter that we need to reply to, a package that we need to return. All this stuff needs to have a place. Portable is something for when we're on the road. I'm talking I can't even write in my notepad, and definitely I can't check my email. So this can be something that I drive a lot, so I'm going to leave myself voicemails, or I'm going to leave myself a voice note, or I'm going to text myself something just using like voice to text. Yeah, so text to voice. Voice to text, yes, is the right one. So the final one is wildcard. It's basically something that makes sense to you. These 5, usually it's recommended to keep them as is and not separate them into work and personal. However, for some things it's a must. So for example, if لو كنا بنروح actually الأوفيس بس يعني physical, it would be very difficult to be lugging around your gathering point from home to work and from work to home. So it makes sense to have them separate. However, for something like the notepad, it makes a lot more sense to have just the one place for both of them. Some people prefer the distinction, so an email is a big one for that. They prefer to have their work emails away from their personal emails. It's not recommended. Dave Crenshaw emphasizes this a lot. It's not recommended because it adds another place you have to check in, especially when you've been working in a place for a long time, so you start forgetting where exactly you used to draw the line between work and home. So for example, do you sign up to something to your Slack account using your work email, or is it not your work email? Because sometimes you sign up to Slack for something that's not work related. So as time goes, you might forget the line. It helps to have it in all one place, but it's understandable that some people find this more helpful. طيب, another thing is this doesn't apply to everyone. I wanted to give a personal example for this. For example, I don't use a portable gathering point. For me, what I do is I simply ask my phone to send myself an email, and I schedule it for the future. So if I'm on the road and I need something, a reminder to send an email to someone, I'll just ask my phone to send an email to my own email address scheduled for 2 hours from now when I know I'll be home and I'll be able to handle that thing. So for me, portable becomes null here. I don't need a portable gathering space. But it's a very good exercise to try to start with these, figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So regardless of their 5 or less or more, going from 30 to that number is not easy. So this is the first step we're going to start with in our organization systems. You need to sit down. This is not going to be a short process, but you need to sit down and look at all the gathering points you have now. Whittle them down to the fundamentals. See what can you merge, what can you join, what really doesn't need to be there. I don't need that junk drawer at the end of my desk that's always hard to open because I stuff so much things inside. I don't need that. I probably can do with a lot better of a solution. This process will only be done once. If you do it right, if you sit down and look at all your life, not just work, I'm talking everything that's around you, whether it's personal, whether it's work, whether it's recreational, and figure out all your gathering points. Once you have all your gathering points, we can move on to the next part. The next, since we're done with space, is mind. Basically, what are we doing with the noise that's cluttering our mind? Our mind is no place to keep our previous thoughts and ideas. The mind often forgets. It blanks out when you're trying to actively recall something, and I think we've all been there. And it throws unrelated data at you when you're really trying to concentrate على حاجة مختلفة. The mind gets overwhelmed if you're stressed out, where it's harder to get information. And if you overload it with information, it gets stressed out and gets anxious. So the mind is pretty much unreliable as a recalling tool. We need to get everything that's stuck in our mind outside our mind. It's not, like I mentioned before, our mind is not a gathering point, and it must not be treated as such. So every time you get a thought in your brain, write it out in the nearest gathering point, and that's the main key. I'm not just writing it out wherever, I'm writing it out in the nearest, most accessible gathering point to me at this time. Get it in a space, getting an idea into a space that is safe and in a place where I know I will deal with it later, makes me stop obsessing about it or thinking about it or being reminded of it in the most random of times. However, لو أنا هبدأ بأن أنا every time I get a thought I'm going to write it out, when I don't have a system in place to start with, this is going to take a really long time, and I'm going to spend the first period of trying to adjust to the new system just constantly writing down intrusive thoughts. So it's better when we're trying to create an organizational MO, we want a clean start, a fresh slate, is to create a brain dump using a mental trigger list. So what's a mental trigger list في الأول? It's basically a list that makes you think of things. This is just a snippet of my own personal trigger list, things that I wrote. In this section, this is يعني under my personal, under my health, with the focus of self. And these are all points that I'm just going to write down once. There are a lot of lists I can share with you after we're done with our presentation, a list that Dave Crenshaw actually prepared of things that just jot your memory of what it could be that you need to get done. So for example, I can look at this list and I remember that, oh, I have the book I'm currently reading. I actually need to return that to Audible because I'm not enjoying it. Or I look at my education and I think, oh, there's a course that should have been started somehow next month and I know nothing about it yet. So let me look at that. I can look at my doctor's appointment and think, oh, I needed to go to the dentist, or I needed to schedule in a physiotherapy session. So this is just a trigger for me to think of what I need to do. You sit down with this list for recommended an hour, especially if it's the first time you do this. And you basically pour it all out in one single place. It's easiest to just have it in one of your organizational points. Or if you're hesitant to yet start with your organizational points, it can start with a blank piece of paper. As long as once you're done, you put that back into the appropriate gathering points. طيب, this step, احنا قلنا في the first step, it'll be done once. This step is not really a one-time thing. Our minds, like our whole universe, love entropy. And if I leave it unchecked, our brains will go back to being full of thoughts and ideas that only exist in our brains. As much as you try to be diligent about writing everything out, there will be things that escape you, thoughts that you get before bed that you don't think are important, or a thought that you get while driving that by the time you get to an organizational space, you might not remember. So it helps to repeat this step every couple of months. Especially after the first time, after you get the gist of it, it takes a lot less than an hour, but it's a really helpful experience to just let everything out. Personally, I look back at every time when I've missed like a big deadline or did very wrong on a task or forgot something, and I can match them directly to times where I've missed I do it quarterly, so I've missed my quarterly brain dump. And there was a lot of things in my mind at that time. It happens, we're humans, things happen, but it really helps to sort of try and empty out your brain and put it all in a gathering point. طيب, we're done with the space and the mind. Our last thing is time. Our time is finite, and it lasts a lot more when we know how to use it properly. But as humans, we love to over budget our time. We think we can watch a 30-minute episode in 25 minutes. We think the car ride that always takes us an hour will somehow miraculously take us 30 minutes in rush hour. We say yes to events left and right and then end up being double booked. We have to cancel, reschedule, and squeeze events in, so you'll find yourself texting friends because you promised to call them at night while also trying to spend time with your family. We always plan we also always plan in terms of أنا هعمل إيه دلوقتي, أنا هعمل إيه بكرة, بالكتير قوي أنا هعمل إيه الأسبوع ده. And if I ever put my plans a month in advance, فهي بتبقى only the big plans. However, there's nothing much different على if I plan this week or next week. Emergencies happen, I can switch things around. But it really helps if I look forward, if I look الشهر الجاي, maybe I'll sit down, divide my time, set out which time I'll be working, which time will be divided on my goals. And if something were to come up on a day which I had something different, plans can change. But it really helps to try to look forward, look to what's coming next, try to understand أنا هعمل إيه next. بدل ما أبقى دايما ببلان تحت رجلي, basically. A very important thing is overdrafting time, which is what we do, is very much like overdrafting a credit card. There are extra costs and limitations on our future abilities. We cannot create time out of nothing. If I promise to do 6 calls in 3 hours and 3 of those calls overlap, at the end of the day, the time that I would have spent working on a presentation, I'll have no energy for it. The limitation will catch up to me and tell me, no, you're done. You don't have focus left for the day. So it's important to treat our time as finite. It's available, it's a lot, but it's finite. And unless I plan it, I can't really make use of it. طيب, so how can we plan our time? Now we have our gathering points, we have clear minds, and we have everything written out. So what do we do with everything? We ask ourselves for every item 3 questions. What steps do we need to get this done? When does this need to get done? And where is its home? This is the final step of finding your foundational organization system. For example, this presentation, I learned about it at the beginning of the week. I knew that I needed to finish it, I needed to 1, narrow my focus, 2, research and create a data draft, 2, create the first presentation draft, and the final thing is to create the finalized version اللي انتوا شايفينه دلوقتي. I knew it needed to be done before the end of Wednesday لأن احنا presentation is at Thursday morning. And I know this is كله ليه علاقة بالشغل بروبوستا, and all my documents I keep them on a Google Drive. So I knew that the documents that this task need to be on my Google Drive. However, I also know that the tasks that I listed out need to go on my daily planner, and this is what I reference when I'm trying to plan out my day. I set out a timeline for the tasks. Monday I worked on narrowing on my focus. Tuesday خلصت الدرافت الريسيرش والدرافت. Wednesday I finished the presentation itself, and you have it with you right now. Every single point on your every single item on your gathering points need to be dealt up with this way. أنا كل حاجة هاخدها هسأل نفسي 3 أسئلة, and I'm going to plan it accordingly. I want to here add بس إنه it's 100% possible that the answer to the first question make the second 2 questions useless. So, for example, if I have one of the notes pages on my Google Drive, a Google Doc, about a project that I'm no longer working on, it's for a design sprint that's closed. There is no current action that I need to take on these notes. I'm not preparing a report. I'm not going to work on a backlog. This is not something that's currently in my pipeline. However, these notes are something I took and I need, so I just need to archive them, put them in their right place, put them somewhere where I can access them later, and then I can delete that from my gathering point. خلاص, I no longer need to look at this. طيب, we have our steps. We've created a gathering point. We've dumped all the information into the appropriate gathering points, and we've made plans for them. طب, what's next? Basically, what's next is planning, is the actual planning. أنا محتاجة يعني this is a short version of a much longer talk, بس in summary, I need to plan my month, I need to plan weekly, and I need to plan daily. So for every month, I need to look at my gathering points, see what items need to fall in this month and schedule them accordingly. Every week, I need to sit down, set a time for myself to look at what needs to get done next week and write down my tasks. And every day before it ends, I look at the coming day and I'm محتاجة خلاص ايه بكرة, what meetings do I have, did something crop up, do my priorities change, هل في حاجة جت في ال gathering points بتاعتي that change what I need to be working on, and this is how I work. I need to be constantly reviewing gathering points when planning. So every time I sit down to plan, we said monthly, weekly, daily. Some people do quarterly, but I'm not going to go over it here, and this is more to do with goal planning. But whenever you get to a planning session, look at your gathering points. If you're diligent about it, especially if you're doing dailies, you'll find there's very little points in your gathering points that can be dealt up with very quickly. But if you don't stay diligent, you're going to find out at the end of a month you have a lot of data that needs processing and might take a bit longer from you. We need to also, just as we're reviewing and removing things from the gathering points, we need to be constantly adding to them. Remember the concept of background tasking. If I'm working on something and I get an idea, I'll just write it out somewhere. I will not think about what I need to do with it. I'll not think when I will schedule it, how I will do it. I'll just put it in a gathering point. Know that wherever that gathering point is something that will get dealt with, and then move on with my life. And then step 2, which was the mind dump, we need to schedule steps. We need to schedule we need to schedule a time every quarter, every month, however you feel yourself you need it, to stay on top of always having a clear mind, always having everything that you need to know down on paper. And this is it for my presentation. I've been talking for a really long time, but I'd love to take any questions if you have them now. Thank you. Thank you. Mhm. Yes, exactly. واتس يعني it's perfectly fine يعني I'm a huge stationery addict. It's perfectly fine as long as and none of these notebooks are where you first go to put something. So يعني if you're لو you thought of انت قاعدة بتشتغلي and you thought of a book that you want to add to your reading list, the solution can't be ان انا هروح اجيب ال reading journal بتاعتي. لأن this will probably most of the time mean ان I don't have time for it. I will not have time to go get it. فخلاص الثought دي يا اما هتفضل في my mind يا اما هنكتبها في ال work journal اللي هي doesn't really belong there. ف when I'm thinking of what to read next عمري ما هفكر ان انا اروح ابص هناك. ف like يعني مم. thank you Alay. thank you thank you thank you. Alright أنا هend the Facebook live. Bye to everybody who's following.